requested by this committee to provide a comprehensive memorandum on the operations of the Department of National Guidance and Religious Affairs, or DNGRA. I'll go straight into the adequacy of the legal and policy framework promoting national values and principles, where we see that Zambia's legal and policy framework for promoting national values and principles is rooted in constitutional mandates, supported by strategic plans and institutional arrangements. However, significant gaps in enforcement, coordination, and resource allocation hinder the realization of these objectives. In terms of the constitutional provisions and foundational statutes, we see that the foundation of Zambia's national values and principles lies in the Constitution, Amendment Act number 2 of 2016. Article 8 articulates these principles, including morality, patriotism, democracy, and sustainable development, while Article 9 mandates their application in governance and public policy. Despite these provisions, there is no singular legislative instrument such as the National Values and Principles Act in order to operationalize these constitutional mandates. And this gap results in fragmented responsibilities as well as limited accountability. In terms of the policy framework and strategic plans, Zambia's policy environment acknowledges the importance of integrating national values into governance and development strategies. And in this regard, we've got the 8th National Development Plan, we have presidential addresses, as well as the revised National Guidance and Religious Affairs Policy of 2023. However, these policy documents lack enforceability and fail to provide the DNGRA with the authority needed to demand compliance from stakeholders. In terms of institutional arrangements and coordination, the DNGRA was established to lead efforts in promoting national values and principles. While the department's mandate is clear, its operations face structural and institutional challenges in terms of decentralization as well as coordination mechanisms. I'll move on to impact and enforcement challenges, where we see that despite the robust articulation of national values in the Constitution and policy documents, enforcement remains weak due to voluntary compliance, monitoring and evaluation deficiencies, as well as resource constraints. And in order to address these challenges, the DNGRA has initiated steps to strengthen the legal and policy framework. So in this regard, there's the proposed National Guidance and Religious Affairs Act, as well as the revised National Guidance and Religious Affairs Policy. I'll move on to interventions, strengths, and programs aimed at preserving national values and principles, where we see that the DNGRA has developed and implemented various interventions, strategies, and programs to embed national values across sectors. These initiatives emphasize capacity building, community engagement, and collaboration with stakeholders to foster an inclusive and ethical society. In this regard, we've got sensitization and awareness raising initiatives, where the DNGRA has prioritized awareness campaigns to educate citizens, institutions, and communities about national values. And this is being done through community sensitizations, information, education, and communication materials, traditional leadership engagement in that space. Then in terms of capacity building and training of change agents, I would say that to ensure sustainability, the DNGRA invests in training programs for individuals who serve as ambassadors for national values. So in this regard, we've got focal persons and change agents, as well as religious leaders and chaplains, and then they train the trainer model. And now move on to integration of national values into curricula and institutions, where we see that embedding national values into educational and institutional systems is key to fostering long-term society transformation through curriculum development in collaboration with the Ministry of Education and TVET institutions, as well as integrity committees. In terms of engagement with religious and community structures, the DNGRA collaborates with religious institutions to promote moral values using interfaith dialogue, religious celebrations, and faith-based initiatives. Now move on to strategic communication, media engagement and documentation, where we see that the TNGRA utilizes strategic communication to amplify its message through the use of media campaigns as well as mindset change strategies. And then I'll move on to self-regulation and good governance mechanisms, where we see that collaboration with religious bodies has led to self-regulatory frameworks aimed at enhancing accountability in terms of codes of conduct and governance training. Then there's resource allocation and multi-sectoral support, where the DNGRA's initiatives are supported through a multi-sectoral framework. In this regard, we've got budget allocations, which are funds earmarked for the 2025 Yellow Book for sensitization and training programs, as well as partnerships, which involves collaborations with civil society and traditional authorities. Then I'll move on to impact and observations, where we can see that while the DNGRA's interventions are comprehensive, challenges remain in terms of limited outreach, monitoring challenges, scalability issues. In the last place, I'll hand over to Mrs. Desa to continue from here. Thank you.
The department's ability to deliver on its mandate is affected by inadequate financing and human resource, where there's limited budgetary allocation, inadequate infrastructure and equipment, as well as human resource deficits. We go to institutional coordination and policy harmonization. This is where the department in its mandate is suffering from fragmented responsibilities, where part of enforcement of the principles is being done by the Anti-Corruption Commission and some by the Human Rights Commission. These where there's overlapping mandate, especially with the department. There's also issues of weak institutional coordination. Without a clear statutory instrument outlining roles and responsibilities, the department faces challenges in aligning activities under a cohesive national strategy. Then there's also a challenge of monitoring, reporting, and verification of the challenges, where there's insufficient monitoring system. Current framework focus on quantitative outputs, that's the number of sensitization changes, rather than qualitative outcomes such as shifts in societal behaviors and attitudes. Then there's limited research capacity. The lack of empirical data and rigorous research limits evidence-based decision making and their ability to identify areas that need improvement. Then we have a problem of stakeholder engagement and communication barriers, where the department has issues with geographical and linguistic barriers due to poor road infrastructure, limited access to communication tools in rural areas. Additionally, the linguistic diversity in this country also complicates the delivery of standardized messaging. Balancing religious and cultural diversity also is a problem, while promoting Zambia as a Christian nation and identifying minority religious and cultural perspective demands advanced intercultural competencies which are often lacking. Sustainability and long-term impacts. Efforts to instill societal values and behavior change require consistent investment and support. But there's always short-term funding cycle where it relies on project-based funding, creating temporary results that may not translate into lasting change. So issues of sustainability comes in. Retention of trained personnel. Focal persons and change agents trained by the department often lack ongoing support, reducing the sustainability of their contributions over time. Structural and operation challenges. Issues of limited decentralization is a problem, as these offices only end at provincial level. There's also lack of district budget line for religious affairs, where they operate without a separate budget, relying on allocation for national guidance section. Structural imbalances. The subordination of religious affairs to guidance diminishes its ability, visibility, and impact. The growing scope of responsibilities within religious affairs warrants its elevation to a full directorate. What are some of the PMRC's recommendations on the way forward? There's need to strengthen the policy framework, enact a dedicated statutory instrument, subsidiary legislations, and formalize religious affairs functions. Enhance funding and resource allocation. There's need to increase budgetary allocation to the department, establish separate budget lines, also invest in infrastructure. Expand organizational structure. decentralization to district level, and upgrading religious affairs to a directorate. Development of robust monitoring and evaluation system. There's need for a comprehensive framework, and there's also need for collaboration with research institutions. There's need to foster inclusive and context-sensitive engagements. There's need for tailor-made intervention, also strengthen interfaith dialogue. Integrate values education into the learning system, embed national values and principles in curriculum, leverage vocational training institutions, so this is through partnership. Strengthen communication and advocacy. There's need for the department to use digital platforms such as social media and other online tools to reach young audiences and broaden engagement. Localization of content, translate educational materials into local languages to include inclusivity. There's also needs to promote sustainability and ownership. Community-driven initiatives are key to ensure that there's support from the grassroots, ongoing support for trained ambassadors to provide refresher training and establish network for focal point person and community leaders to sustain value-based interventions.
So in terms of our conclusion, we have seen that this assessment submits that Zambia possesses a strong constitutional and policy foundation for promoting national values and principles, yet several gaps and challenges in the full realization of these goals. While the Department of National Guidance and Religious Affairs has implemented various sensitization training and communication strategies, as well as an integrated values into educational curricula and religious function, its efforts are constrained by limited resources, fragmented coordination mechanisms, and inadequate monitoring and evaluation frameworks. Addressing some of these challenges through enhanced legal clarity, increased funding, capacity building, data-driven decision-making, inclusive engagement strategies, and stronger institutional partnerships can strengthen the department's operational effectiveness. By embracing the recommended reforms, Zambia can move closer to its vision of a society anchored on integrity, civic responsibility, moral leadership, ensuring that national values and principles remain both a guiding ideal and tangible influence on the national's development trajectory. Chair, the announcement.
Honorable Chair, representing the good people of Rwanseshi constituency, Northern Province, and I'm a committee member. Chair, I have two questions. The first one is on page 2, and Article 3 on the policy framework to promote national values accosted to the constitutional provisions. I've seen in your letter talking about the articles of funding, which at times making it difficult for the department to execute its mandate. Coming to Article number 2 of 2016, now we are the Ministry of National Guidance and Religious, and the Ministry was sure sufficient for reasonable. Come 2021, that ministry was reduced to the department, and in terms of resource envelope, ministry versus department, the difference. Now, I would like to find out what could you suggest for this committee for the interaction that you have with our stakeholders. Are you comfortable with having this department, the run of the department, or to go back to the ministry so that we can work through the set of issues? Then on 29th of December 1991, the Second Republic had declared the country as a Christian nation. When it comes to patriotism, democracy, and sustainable development, well as morality. This country has found itself with issues to do with bilateral agreements that we are signing, where we're giving human rights to others. I'd like you to share with us, with this committee, is there anything during your research that you came across or that you may wish to share with us, how it has impacted in terms of not really realizing what is important when it comes to the mandate of this department when it comes to principles and values of this country.
PMRC, as we're doing the review of operations of the department, I really want to get maybe a different view. Did you try to compare with other countries? Since you are a research engine, I want to find out, did you try to compare with other countries which have this particular department where you have indicated that you would rather it became a full directorate? I want to find out what advantages would be there, because this is a ministry squeezed into a department. Then you are saying maybe it would be better if it is taken into a directorate. I would want your sure comment, and in addition, one of your submissions here is that the department's reliance on project-based funding risks creating temporary results that may not translate into lasting change. This is a very good submission, and I think it's very frank with us. I want to find out, donors are now pulling out, and the resource envelope in our country is squeezing, or it is not even there. Especially maybe to even do with religious affairs, especially that the ministry was closed and everything. There is nothing that we can do to show. I want your maybe straight comment on what you think, especially the donor funding at the moment, with Trump coming in, we will not even have maybe even money to be able to give out for our own behavior, which we are supposed to maybe look at, because this is something to do with the culture and how people must be able to behave in that particular country. I submit.
Thank you, Chair. We'll start with the first question, where I think it's also in tandem with the question that has been asked by Honorable Nyirenda to say this department was moved from a ministry to a section under the Office of the Vice President, and then we are talking about issues of funding. It's true that the shift from a ministry to a unit under the Office of the Vice President is somewhat a reversal to what we're trying to achieve as a country, where we are saying we would want to ensure that there's adherence to issues of morality. We're talking about issues that have to do with morality, that we have to also have to do with issues of patriotism. Then we have this department. The time we were doing this presentation, I personally went to the department myself. I personally went. First, the place where these people are housed, even me, I would have been discouraged. It's somewhere at the back of the building where even the furniture and anything else. So from the staff to where I went, even myself, I would be one of the people that are very discouraged. So moving from where the staff is to where the person who's heading the institution also is somewhere at cabinet office. So one or the other, degrading it from where it was as a means to where it is. First things first, what comes in is a staff that is discouraged to also just carry out their mandate. Because if you look at a place where somebody works, it determines also on what type of output they're going to put in place. So degrading it to a place where it was also has an impact to where we want to achieve as a country. If we want to have a patriotism and everything else, it starts to the people that are going to be able to put enforcement. So where we've said it could move to a directorate, or if not a directorate, even a statutory body. then that will enable this institution to have its own budgetary allocation standing in the yellow book that will also now be able to help it come out of its mandate. We did not really compare with another country, Honorable. We did not compare with another country to see how then it has such a functionality, especially from the constitution works. Coming to the issue of declaration of Zambia as a Christian nation in 1991 and some of the international treaties and frameworks that we signed as a country, it comes in to say Zambia does not operate in a vacuum. Zambia operates in collaboration with the global village. So there are a number of instruments that we sign, some not really knowing what the content is, some of these really knowing what the content is, some not really understanding what our long-term repercussions are. But it goes back to say issues, especially of human rights, that is something that is at the global level. So I think in our presentation we stated to say there is a challenge in enforcing issues that have to do with Zambia being a Christian nation, while also having to deal with minority religious affairs. Because in Zambia we have a lot of religions where we have Christianity, but we also have Muslims, we have Hindus, like we have everybody else, because we live in a global village where the movement of people, despite their race, despite their religious affiliation, cannot hinder them from traveling or staying in any particular country. So really it's a challenge to also enforce what we as a country believed in, like in 1991, to say we are a Christian nation, because Zambia really does not live in a vacuum. Thank you.
Chair, I just wanted to find out how we can maybe look at the issue of national values. We all know and agree that the national values are a constitutional matter covered under Article 8 and also covered, amplified in Article 9, where the President even comes to address the National Assembly. Having that in mind, we always want to paralyze or collapse the debate on department this, ministry that, and so forth. And yet, we have a national plan. For instance, we have a national plan, a national development plan, which in some way also want to speak to the same national values. PMRC, don't you think that it is important that Parliament, judicial and executive, they are being the three arms of government, and they always develop a strategic plan, can in their strategic plans mainstream the same national values and also deliver report and indicators so that these national values can be monitored. I know that, for instance, what we read and what we get from reports that comes as a result of speeches that comes as a result of Article 9, we always get about statistics about alcohol, teenage pregnancies and the like, but that's about the expectation of what national values. And national values are supposed to operate more of a compass of the nation in making decisions, in executing national programs, meaning that we are supposed to have a value-based approach to execution of programs. These three arms of government, that's the judiciary, legislature, as well as executive. But that doesn't happen. We want to get this particular muscle to a department, to a ministry, which in this case to me is supposed to contain of up these institutions in terms of national values. You can't subject to journalism, issues of democratic tenets, and many others to the simplistic approach and the parenthetical policy through a department. I think there we have a step, especially that we also want to protect this national values, national progress. My main question is, don't you think that these three acts of government will take the bull by its horns and mainstream the national values in their strategic plan so that they can have deliverables in that.
PMRC, in your conclusion, you have indicated that one of the strategies that should be used should be maybe looking at the education curriculum. Now, we have just finished reviewing our curriculum, and it has not even, maybe they say that we are starting to implement it, is it in 2025? It's this year? It's this year when we are starting to do the implementation. So before we even do the implementation, there's already a realization to say there is something that is missing concerning the values and the compass that we need, or direction. Now, I would want to maybe get a comment from you. Curriculum development or reviews is a very costly program. And if national values are of great importance, I thought this should have been at the center, because now, as we have missed it already, I think we are now talking about the young ones who are coming. Issues to do with sexual reproductive health, they have been embedded seriously in our curriculum. And you find that this department, from religious affairs and everything, could have been, or maybe they were not even consulted. Hence, the children that we are now starting to teach today have been raised, are being given a very different foundation. I want your comment, because us as lawmakers, we made our submission, but when we look, the person who provides the money is the one who gives the guidance of what should be in our curriculum. As research consultants, what would be your comment on that?
Thank you, Chair. On the question of issues of the curriculum, that's very true to say he who provides the money provides the direction. It also goes back to issues of monitoring and evaluation. I've always said, submitted to Parliament to say, monitoring and evaluation in Zambia is not a homegrown solution, it's not a homegrown initiative. That's an initiative that has come from our donors. No wonder even funding it, or for us to be able to implement that MNG policy of 2019 has been an issue, because that's not something that we ourselves initiated. So it also goes back to the curriculum. The people that have been pushing, that have issues of review of the curriculum, especially to look at issues of reproductive health, also have the part to play when it came to funding the review of the curriculum. Issues that had to do with, as you say, that had to do with national values, that becomes a very important issue, especially for children that are growing. We can give an example of China, where some of these values are embedded from the time when children are young. But for us, that's not been an issue, because we always say the smallest unit in society that should enforce issues of values and behavior is a family. But our parents, even us as upcoming parents, we are too busy looking for money to fund our children's livelihoods. So the only place where these children are able to learn some of these values is school, before we even get to the church, where also church issues of morality are fragmented. It depends on how the pastor feels at such a day, on what they're going to preach. Our church itself in Zambia is fragmented, especially to enforce morality. It depends who are they supporting, who's also funding, giving them those funds as they're implementing programs. So the only sure way where we could have issues of morality, national values, become the education system. But even now, this was passed. I think there was an outcry when it came to the new curriculum. A lot of people said consultation was not really done effectively. So it goes back to say, who provided the funding? Was there enough funding for them to have a comprehensive review of what was needed for us to have the curriculum that will stand the test of time? So it goes to issues of the sources of funding, which we don't know where it came from, for them to fund the curriculum. And yes, we needed to have national values that were embedded into the curriculum. enable the children that are growing now to know what the values, because even me, I knew the values in 2017. So, but for these children, who's going to teach them if it is not the education sector? Honorable Fube spoke about why are these not national values then also embedded as cross-cutting issues as for different institutions, ministries, parastatals, and any other spending agency. It's true, that's also one avenue that can be taken, but while we still propose for a directorate or statutory body, but these also are some of the issues that should be embedded. I think all ministries and parastatals have what we call integrity committees. So what's the function of these integrity committees, if not where national values should also stand? So those are some of the things that we need to look at as a country, because who's monitoring the implementation of the Constitution, especially when it comes to Article 8 and Article 9? Is it the judiciary that is looking at it to ensure that these articles are met, or is it the executive or the legislature? So it goes back to see, as a country, do we still need to, are we still interested to ensure that there's implementation of this particular section of the Constitution? There's an issue of monitoring and evaluation where Honorable asked to say, what benefit has Zambia gotten from the declaration of Zambia as a Christian nation? There are benefits that we've gotten. There are a lot of people now have options where they want to go congregate. So there are so many changes. There are so many churches that at our doorstep, as opposed to having just one major church. One advantage is that people have been helped. Some of these churches run NGOs. Some of these churches are running programs that have to do with poverty alleviation. So there's a benefit that has come, though it might be overshadowed with church politics, but the benefit is there. Thank you.